60-minute drive for a 60-minute game. After all the miles we've traveled, we're almost there. After all the hours we've worked, one more can make us legends. After all
we promised that we would be back bowl time for the last word, and here we are, wrapping up the first round of the college football playoffs. You saw a little bit last night. We talked about the Notre Dame matchup with their big victory. We're going to talk about the other three today. Of course, Brock is back along with Bill and Greg. And guys, 3 interesting games today. All of them were pretty much one-sided for the most part, with a little bit of a comeback at the end. But for a lot of people that were saying, oh, this team should have been in, that team should have been in, they got it right. There's a lot of armchair quarterbacks going on the internet right now.
Oh, it is totally ridiculous. And Ole Miss's head coach Lane Kiffin, you're the number 1 contender on my hate list. You clown. You absolute clown for what you said last night because Indiana got beat by Notre Dame. You're a total joke, Lane Kiffin. You are a complete and utter joke. And Nicole Auerbach, she is the smart one in this whole bunch of people out there because she doesn't want any more of these damn stupid bowl games. She wants all these games to be decided at the home ballparks of these teams. I love that. What the hell we got to go to Louisiana for? There's nobody down there that's playing for the championship. There's nobody in Florida. What do they need the Gator Bowl for and the Outback Bowl? No, tough luck. You just get the rest of the riffraff.
He's in rare form to kick us off, folks.
Wow, we hit the ground running.
That was strong. How do you even follow that, gentlemen, is the real question. I guess I would just jump off of Greg's point. She's right about Lane Kiffin. I mean, I wouldn't say to that extent, maybe if I was a younger, more angry man. But now in early adulthood, I have realized that people get bonuses in life and in contracts. And thus, Lane Kiffin wants his bonus, and he wants it bad. Whatever bonus he's got for the CFP, I'm sure he is. That's what he's fighting for. But in reality, Ole Miss doesn't have a claim to the college football playoffs. There's only 2 teams that realistically have a claim that you could say, and even those arguments are flawed to an extent, which is Miami and South Carolina. And South Carolina can eliminate because South Carolina did not defeat Alabama and Ole Miss, the other 2 teams at 3 losses. So realistically, it's Miami that has the only great. Well, Miami, you should take care of business in conference play. But like I said, it's that team, it's Miami, it's no one in the SEC. I don't know why Lane Kiffin is still complaining. He doesn't have any leg to stand on. Should he have had a different set of circumstances regarding his losses? Sure. But you are the only team in America Kentucky defeated within the Southeastern Conference. They're a
4-8 team, Kentucky.
Yeah. And one of those wins was to like Kentucky Bluegrass Musical School for Children or whatever it's called. So does it really count that much? Like you can't name a national champion if you're Kentucky's only in-conference win on the season. You can't consider yourself eligible to jump Miami if you don't have a win over Florida in the Swamp, and Miami does. And Miami has 2 losses, worse on two losses compared to your 3. Plus, their losses aren't as bad as yours. A very strong Georgia Tech team who has multiple top 25 wins on the record, and also played Georgia close, and a 9-4 Syracuse team who is the shock of the ACC. I don't understand why we're still having this conversation about it. And to Greg's point, it does need to end.
Well, listen, I take Lane Kiffin's gripes online with the same effect that I take Danny Cannell's gripes online. Neither one of them matter. Pretty much they are what they are. You can vent all you want on X or Twitter or whatever they want to call it nowadays. At the end of the day, you should have won your games. You would have been there. You didn't do it. Enjoy the nice headphones you get at the bowl game. You get it. But otherwise, we have real important things to discuss here. So right off the bat, we're going to jump right to one of the earlier games. And we talked about this a little last night. We did when we wrapped up the Notre Dame game. We talked about today's games. And some of the things teams need to do. What did SMU need to do? What did Penn State need to do? Penn State did exactly what I said they needed to do. Get a lead, hold on to it, and do not let SMU back into it. And they did just that. 38-10 was your final there. Both running backs from Penn State went wild. Yep. Neither one had 100 yards, but you look at the yards per carry average there, quite high. So they had a very effective running game, to say the least, in Happy Valley, as they like to say. My multiple family and friend alumni are all jumping for joy over this win, so happy for them. But right, guys,
who else is happy about this win tonight? Who else is happy?
Yeah.
Oh, look at me.
Greg, you were happier last night. I'm not going to give you 2 nights in a row now. Come on.
Oh, yes, I get 2 nights.
To be fair, Jeff, he hasn't had a lot of nights in a long time. So let's let him have
That's
his couple
right.
ones.
That's right. Give me something here in my old age.
You had last night. Now you get to relax a little and let the others enjoy the night. Right? So this is Penn State's time. Let's talk about it. Penn State all over SMU, guys.
There's been a lot of talk about playing this time of year and quote unquote the elements. And of all the teams, the one that looked the most thrown off, the most affected, the most cold was SMU. Southern Methodist, they looked like a team that didn't enjoy their experience. They looked like they did not like playing in the weather, and you could see some of their players, even early in the game, looking like they had not prepared or did not understand what how their body would react. So put it that way. And their body reacted in a way that they, 1, didn't expect, and 2, did not enjoy. Like I said, Kevin Jennings, and mark my words, he is a special player, and he's going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate next year. I won't be shocked if he wins it, in fact, but he at least should be a contender for the Heisman next year. He is like I said, tremendous talent. But you could tell this is the coldest game he'd ever played in his life. And he looked like it. Also, he wasn't done any favors by the offensive line, by his play calling, but his own play really was the biggest issue. He struggled to find open receivers quickly. The running game never really picked up for them. But the thing that just jumped out to me was that their players, who we talked about team speed constantly, right? The one thing that SMU is supposed to have going for is team speed. Well, team speed should mean big plays, but they never found it. They never found the ability to get to the edge. They never found the ability to turn the corner. They never found the ability to find cutback lanes. Any of the things that help you to get big plays or get deep on people. If you can't run the ball between the tackles or run the ball outside, if quarterback run isn't working for you, if you're not able to complete the ball consistently in the intermediate or deep passing game, and in the short passing game, no one's breaking tackles, or making people miss, you're not going to win that game, right? I mean, that's all the things you need to do on offense to win, and they did 0% of those things. And then on defense, as was just mentioned, they got absolutely hammered by the run game. And whatever Penn State did in the passing game was simply a bonus, syrup on the pancakes, a cherry on top, a sprig of parsley on the lamb. Pick something. It was all of those things. If they had thrown the ball for not a single yard, they would have won that game. Penn State would have, because of what they could do in the run game. But, of course, they did throw the ball and threw it fairly well. So, to me, this was the least interesting of all the games, right? At least in all the other games, I had at some point a feeling maybe perhaps the other team might get back into it and get something going. Unfortunately, Southern Methodist never seemed at any point to really have a thing to grab onto on either offense or defense to make them think they could contend.
Yeah, Bill, you're absolutely right. I mean, Kevin Jennings is a dome type of player. He performs best when the weather does not play a massive role. That's not a criticism on Jennings. It just matches his play style. He doesn't have the strongest arm in the world. He likes to run. He uses his mobility to open up both running and passing opportunities. It is what it is. At Penn State, first of all, they played defense perfectly. They did not over pursue. They let them throw from the pocket. They scored points. When you score points on defense, you win football games. That's exactly what happened. SMU, unfortunately, I don't think people remember, making the jump. This is their first year going from the G5 to the P5. They went from the American to the ACC. So there is going to be that gradual process before you can start to bring in the type of players that can play in these type of conditions against this type of physical opponent. So at SMU, they had a great season so far, and there's a lot to build on. But Rhett Lashlee, I was a guy that didn't like his hire, but obviously that's why I'm not called to hire people, because he has done a phenomenal job at SMU over these past couple of years. And I think that this is going to be a massive lesson for their program. And with the type of NIL money that they can produce in Dallas, expect SMU to be a constant presence in these playoffs for years to come.
Yeah. They made the jump, like we talk about some of the other schools that had some issues, but they didn't, right? We knew they were good when they were the American. They were one of the few teams that I felt from the American that would come up and have instant success. 11-2 success, didn't expect that, but I can say I did expect them to go 8-9 wins, maybe even 10. This was a team that we saw them in the American were very tough. They were just getting better, right? As this program has gotten better. They had a lot of the pieces that can translate to other conferences. They were one of those teams that were beating other teams out of conference when they were the American. So I think that, they are right where they're meant to be. Like I said, I didn't expect the 11 wins this year. Don't be surprised they get close to that again next year. But I think what you're going to look at with certain teams like them, we saw it with some of the Pac-12 teams. Arizona State did way better moving over to the Big 12, right, than I expected them to. I expected them to middle out the Big 12. They won the conference outright. All right, so there are certain teams that made the conference switch seamlessly, and then you have some that are still struggling. SMU wasn't one of those ones I thought that would struggle. I thought they would actually have a strong performance this year. They had a stronger performance than I even thought they would. So, but let's just face it, you're taking a team from Dallas that's not in the NFL, that's used to playing all over the country, okay, and put them in Pennsylvania in December, at Christmas time in December. It is so special weather there, okay? Just going there in September, okay, it is a nice 80 degrees during the day and a nice balmy 42 degrees at night, okay? Mountain weather is totally different, right, than Texas weather, okay? So there's some things, when you're not used to wearing, and people go, well, it shouldn't affect you with football. Nonsense, okay? When you're out there in pads, you can't put on a bunch of stuff, okay? You can put on all the Under Armour you want. It will help you for about a quarter, and then after that, you feel it, okay? And if that ground is cold and you're making tackles or getting put to that ground and it's frozen, you feel it, okay? So it is a different experience from playing in warm weather states and in domes and all that other stuff. So that is something to contend with. If you're not mentally ready for it, it can affect you, all right? But the fact of the matter was, I saw not just the weather did affect them. The main thing I saw was a more physical Penn State team. That Penn State defense brought the fight to SMU today, and it was turnover after turnover after turnover, and I think that was the biggest difference in this game. Penn State's defense came out with a fire, and they came out with something to prove today, and they proved it big time versus SMU.
And it was a walk-on, kids. Dom DeLuca with 2 interceptions, including a pick 6, that made the big plays for the Penn State Nittany Lions. A walk-on. Imagine that. He was a 0-star recruit.
Yeah, they never get the stars right. Those guys.
That's all nonsense. We both coach up. But again, there he was with the pick 6. Game over. Right at that point. That was the defining moment of this game. And it's not Katron Allen, it's Fat Man Allen. Whenever you gotta give him his proper name. He doesn't like Katron. It's Fat Man Allen, and we know he's not going to be.
We can say Fat Man. His mama named him Katron. We're gonna put that on the stat sheet.
No, but his mama was the one who called him Fat Man to begin with, and that's why he was called Fat Man.
Yeah.
So
Stat sheet says K-Tron. So he's going to say K-Tron. You know.
We'll see what name they call when he's drafted.
Yes.
Yep.
I can hear Roger Goodell. K-Tron Allen, Penn State.
Yeah. Well, K-Tron's going to go later in the draft, but Roger's not going to be up at the mic at that point.
Yeah, no, there'll be somebody else mispronouncing his name. You're right about that.
Yeah. But SMU plays in a 32,000 seat arena.
Yeah.
And you go up to
Beaver
Happy
Stadium.
Valley with 106,000 crazy Pennsylvania fans, and you play in that wind. That was nasty. That wind was nasty.
Yeah, it was. First of all, I think if you check through the records of the history of football, if you have multiple pick sixes, I think your winning percentage is probably in the 0.1 something percentile. You know, I'll be shocked if it's even 1%. It's probably less. I mean, it's difficult to overcome a pick six. Multiple pick sixes is not a recipe for success. And then you can't run the football. I mean, that if you have multiple pick sixes and you can't run the football, that's it, right? I mean, at that point we can stop talking. There's no chance. If you can't run the football on offense and you have multiple pick sixes, if you can't stop the running game on defense, I mean, there's nothing more to discuss. You do not have a chance of victory.
Well, final thoughts on this one before we move on to game number 2.
Well, as was said before, both those teams we'll be seeing again. Is if they keep it to 12 teams, I think we'll see these two teams next year too. The future is very bright, as was mentioned earlier, for Southern Methodist. Penn State's going to lose some important players, but a surprising number of their top players, at least thus far, have announced they're returning. Now we'll see if that remains true. They still have time to change their minds, but some of their most important players who have eligibility left, a couple of them have already stated they're coming back next year.
Yeah.
So I like their chances, both chances, for them to be in a 12-team playoff again.
All right. So we're going to take that one down. And we're going to talk about game number 2, where Texas outlasts Clemson. They were ahead handily. Clemson kind of came back a little bit. But once again, another team that brought somebody to their house and ran them out of the building. Texas with almost 300 yards on the ground as a team, 2 100-yard rushers, 4 combined rushing touchdowns between those guys. And by the way, Quentin Ewers did throw the ball pretty decently today. So overall, an impressive performance by Texas. They did you guys a favor and sent Dabo home because we know you guys are anxious for Dabo to go home. So
just point out that that's Brock and myself who want Dabo to go home.
Yes. Well, everybody knows Bill's like me. Bill's impartial.
He's impartial. He's impartial. Whereas Brock and I, we don't really appreciate Dabo Sweeney. And and here's another little point too about Joe Pa. 5 times unbeaten. Nick Saban's never done that. Sweeney's never done that. Smart's never done that. All these guys who everybody talks about as the greatest coaches of all time in college football, none of them had 5 unbeaten seasons like Joe Pa did.
Right. That's because Joe Pa played chumps.
Oh, good Lord.
Listen. I'm gonna tell the audience that I don't even know if that's true or not. I'd have to go look back. I just antagonize it.
It is mostly not. Now they were an independent through much of that run, and so they sort of were able to put together their own sort of schedule. But they had usually high quality schedules. Penn State would often schedule USC, not every year, but many years. They would schedule
West Virginia,
Michigan State, West Virginia, Pitt. And Pitt was good in those days, Brock, but very good in those days.
Was that the Johnny Rodgers days?
Johnny Rogers and even Johnny Majors and also
Johnny Majors, my bad. My Johnny Majors.
Jackie Sherrill and that bunch. And if you go back, I mean, I think when he started, I think he took over from Rip Engel in what, 62?
Yep.
Yeah, so it was still oh God, the one that Dick had played for. Not Sutherland. What was his name? It'll come back to me. But yeah, Pitt's been good in that during the run that, you know, especially the early years of Penn State's run. But the point is that you know, Penn State was one of those schools that, like Notre Dame and a few others, prized their independence. But unlike Notre Dame, didn't have quite the same national following, right? And yeah, they didn't have touchdown Jesus, yes, Jeff, but they didn't have quite the same national following, right?
I was mentioning the U because the U was independent back then too.
Independent
was
too.
independent for a long time, right?
Yeah.
But the difference is they were not very good for a long time, right? They were kind of a doormat throughout the 50s, 60s, and even well into the 70s.
Until Mr. Schellenberger.
It took on Schellenberger, right, to say, well, we're sitting right in a hotbed of talent. Let's stop pretending that we're Duke, and you know, try to be more like Florida State. For a long time, Miami really did treat themselves like they were the Harvard of the, you know, of the deep. Well, I don't know. I guess it's the Deep South, technically speaking, but they didn't treat themselves like they were a Deep South school, right? They acted like they were something very different. Yes, Schellenberger turned that around. And ironically, you know, said, because it's going to sound funny to most people, they did not do a good job of recruiting South Florida for a long time.
Exactly.
For a long time, Miami didn't take seriously the fact they were sitting on one of the greatest hotbeds of talent the world has ever seen. And yes, Schellenberger changed that. And then obviously everyone who followed him, you know, people really sleep on Dennis Erickson's time there. Yes. Like I feel like people remember how good Jimmy Jones was there, and obviously Schellenberger, you know, was sort of the pioneer. But look at the crazy numbers that Erickson put up at his time at Miami. I mean, he was good every place he's been, in college at least, as a coach. But his Miami run is ridiculous. It's up there with Newt Rockne in his time at Notre Dame. I mean, name anybody's run anywhere, and he's in there. He's in the top 5, in my opinion, for short-term runs as a head coach. He doesn't have the longevity of people like Joe Paterno or Bowden or whatever, but that was it 6 seasons, whatever number of seasons it was that he had in Miami. I mean, you mentioned undefeated seasons, right? I mean, they played a tough schedule. If you manage to have an undefeated season with the schedules that they put together, that tells you something. But yeah, that, you know, we're ranging far afield. But when we're talking about how that sort of plays into these games, scheduling is now different, right? With the super conference, now you're playing 9 conference games in many cases, and that should be a good thing if your conference is a good conference. It should be a good thing for your quote unquote strength of schedule. Now, some schools then look at their 3 non-conference games and say, we'll do one good game and then 2 cupcakes, right? The classic one game, good game, 2 cupcakes. A lot of SEC schools particularly will play one, you know, we'll play Virginia Tech, or we'll play whatever, one good game, one interesting game. And then, you know, no offense to the
Mercer, UMass.
Right. No offense to UMass. No offense to Bowling Green State University. No offense to
Citadel.
Right.
Mercer.
Right.
Mercer loves to beat up on military people. It's very odd. That was sweet.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Right. Yes. Nice. Hello, VMI. But yes. Right. but yes. That's what a lot is happening now, right? You'll have your 9-game conference schedule. Now you're in the super conferences. You'll play one game that people will actually want to watch, and then 2 utter cupcakes. And while I do think you deserve, you know, to find at least, you know, one quote unquote surefire win or a rest up week, or put it, I feel like when you go to 2 or more than 2, you should get some sort of slap on the wrist. But now with the age of the super conference, we shouldn't see people sleepwalking their way to 9 or 10 wins, unless your conference is once again super weak. I am thrilled by some of the things I see happening, and then less thrilled by some of the things I see happening right now in the age of the super conference. I do hope that teams can't duck some of the better teams within their own conference, which sometimes happens, right? And that's the big thing people are pointing out with Indiana, right? That Cignetti took the job. He said, at least in part, why he took the job is he looked at the schedule and said, oh yeah, I can get to 9 or 10 wins.
Yep.
And so that was part of his calculus, and I'm not mad at him for that. But I feel like there should be some sort of mechanism to balance out. Like if your conference schedule is for some reason super soft, you lose a home game or something. I don't know. There should be something to do. I don't know. Somebody smarter than me can figure it out, I'm sure. But yeah, that's the one sort of knock I have on the super conference is that some teams somehow manage to not play the better teams in their conference, despite supposedly this whole super conference thing, taking away the sense that you're going to have a soft schedule.
But the funny thing is now ADs have so much flexibility, right? We talked about just a few years ago how they weren't playing a balance of home and away, right? We were talking about teams playing 8 home games. 8 out of your 11 games are at home. All right. So that is a total imbalance of scheduling, right? You're going to play 8 games. So you're playing basically 6 conference games out of 11, 3 on the road, 3 at home. And then the rest, you're adding in 3 more home great games against non-conference opponents, whether they're at your level or not. And then you're scheduling a couple of road games. Well, actually, no, that's it. It's your whole road game schedule. Yeah. So you're not even playing. All right. So it's like, you're playing 8 games at home during an 11-game season.
Right.
Make that make sense. So there was no real balance to it. ADs have so much leeway that, yes, they're going to play in this conference, but we're still going to manipulate our schedule to try and get the wins we need because, I kind of like my house and car where it is.
Yeah. Right. But the Texas versus Clemson game today, Wisner got injured. Yep. Jadon Blue came in and basically took over the running back position.
That was actually bad news for Clemson when Wisner got hurt.
Yeah. Think about it. He had 110 yards before he left.
Yeah.
I mean, no offense to Wismer, who is a terrific running back, but I feel like he's slightly easier to defend than Jayden Blue just because of that third gear. Wismer has a terrific first gear and a fantastic second gear, but Jayden Blue still has another gear. He can hit that button and turn on the knocks, right? That nitrous oxide kicks in. People just don't gain on him. Once he turns the corner, you are in his rear view, and that's it. You're done.
I have no idea if young Mr. Blue is related to the great Vida Blue, who was a great pitcher in the 1970s for the Oakland A's. But that reminded me of the way that Vida Blue could pitch at people. He had that second and third gear, and when you see Jayden Blue running that way, it reminded me of Vida Blue pitching for the A's back in the 1970s there, because this guy's got that third gear. Like you said, he's got a third gear. That's a very challenging running back to try and deal with.
It's funny when I watch him run. He reminds me of a bigger, more powerful version of Devin Achane. Same speed, that home run speed, same vision to the outside, but he can run through tackles a lot more than Achane did. Achane was more that guy. He hit the crease and you just didn't touch him. You don't always get to touch Blue, but there's times when you do get a hand on him, he's still running through it and going the distance. So he's got to be a guy you got to keep your eye on. But, the fact that Wisner had 100 yards plus before he went out, just shows you how bad they ate up Dabo's defense today.
Which was going to be the case to begin with, because, again, Dabo Swinney, he has the Stephen Jones disease of he loves his guys. He loves his guys. That's it. Well, guess what, Dabo? you better learn what the transfer portal is all about, because boy, does your club need some. And that's
I mean,
that's
to be
what
fair to Clemson, they did just bring in like 2 guys in the portal, so times are changing at Clemson, whether we want to recognize it or not. And I just want to add, as much as I don't like Dabo Swinney, if Oklahoma makes a head coaching change next year, I think old Brett Venables is going back down to Clemson, and you don't want to see his defense again. So I am not shutting the door on old Dabo. I think winning the ACC and the manner in which it did has revitalized that man. Out of all of this Jesus NIL rhetoric is out of the window. I think he wants to win another natty, and he is going to make the deal with the devil to get it done. So
watch out for
Clemson.
How the hell?
I got a sound bite, the week 1 clip where you're like, Dabo's done, fire Dabo, fire.
I was, and then he starts using the
he's not going nowhere, folks. And if he gets Brett Venables, the evil empire is.
It's so bad.
Expect this from you.
And even I didn't expect this from Clemson. I thought they were going to get steamrolled today. And I mean, yes, they did lose by 14. And Texas did cover the spread. Clemson was competitive for large portions of the game, especially Caleb Klubnik down the stretch. It's a quarterback that we don't see, for lack of a better term, any type of tall roof or ceiling when it comes to him. And yet, they were able to be productive against Texas, a team that, in all of our minds, should be stopped defensively. They have phenomenal defensive players. Makuba, I believe his last name is Andrew Makuba. Jedi Barron, Tafe, all them boys. I could name all day saying them, but Clemson was effective. But most importantly, the wide receiver showed up. And when Dabo Swinney is in his bag, it's when he goes back to his roots, and it's coaching wide receivers. And when they're making catches like that, Clemson is dangerous. And now they're going to the transfer portal. Dabo is catching up with the times. And I think the evil empire round 2 is coming back around for another, U-turn.
Oh, and Tape's another walk-on, kids. Oh my goodness, another walk-on who plays very good football. Oh, and the Dodge Bowl this time went to Quinn Ewers. 4 years ago, it went to Kate Klubnik. But the Dodge Bowl is because it was the father and son coaching against each other too, by the way, in the Texas High School Championship.
Right.
And Daddy had Kate Klubnik, and the son had Quinn Ewers. That's why I'm calling it the Dodge Bowl, because that's the family name.
Right. And I remember Todd Dodge as a player.
Yep.
Yes, I have. And he ended up at North Texas.
North Texas.
Yep. Yeah, the Dodges I am quite familiar with, and they are, royalty in Texas high school football. So I'm very familiar with the Dodge family.
Yeah.
And Quinn Ewers has at various points had people poke him for various reasons and point out his weaknesses. And of course, he does have still weaknesses. He is healthier. You could see he was healthier this game than he had been in other games. And I'm still not super high on him as a next level prospect, but you started to see some of why this guy was a, $1 million, as they say, player coming out, a player that there was quite a bidding war for. You started to see some of that. And then I used to give a little tongue-in-cheek award every year, which I called the Crompton Yates Award to, guys that I sort of wrote off, who managed to sort of turn it around later in their college careers, named after Jonathan Crompton and T.J. Yates. T.J. Yates, of course, at North Carolina, who managed to have a solid NFL career mostly as a backup. And then Crompton, not quite so much at the next level, but he was a guy that, UNC fans at one point had nicknamed T.J. Yates T.J. Yikes. And then I don't know what they called Crompton at Tennessee, but he used to get booed lustily at one point in Old Neyland. And then he turned it around under Lane Kiffin, actually, and had a solid senior year playing under Kiffin at Tennessee. But Klubnik is one of those guys that at one point people were wondering if he was even going to hold on to the starting job at quarterback, and he had a really good season. And once again, there's differing things I'm hearing about what he's going to do next year. So we'll see if he does indeed come back, or if he does indeed declare. I think he has the ability to think he has one more year of eligibility left, should he decide to exercise it. But you saw his improvement from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. And if that is his arc, and if he does come back next year, then he and Aller will be probably, the early favorites or amongst the early favorites for QB1 going into next year's season. We mentioned Mr. Jennings. The ACC has some quarterbacks, right? Mr. Jennings will be back, and he'll look good and probably look even better. Miami, as always, will have a nice little quarterback battle between some of the guys they've recruited, and of course they'll bring in some top flight that have brought in some top flight grad transfer types, and it'll be an interesting landscape, I guess is the term I'm looking for. Interesting quarterback landscape. We got to see young Mr. Nico Iamaleava, who will be back. Obviously, he's just a baby in essence, and he should be better next year. But the SEC, that's been to me the difference between the ACC and the SEC is quarterback play. Jackson Dart, Carson Beck-ish, sort of, were the only sort of upperclassmen quarterbacks that looked good at times, really, even most of this year. Milroe, had a couple of good games, but mostly looked like a guy that's really struggled to see the field as a passer.
He needs to stay at school, and I don't care that Alabama has this $1 million NIL kid in behind him. Jalen Milroe, if that's the case, and Alabama wants this $1 million kid to play football for you, just hit the transfer portal. You'll be much better off for yourself than trying the NFL at this point.
All right, if no one's going to say, I'm going to say this was the worst SEC quarterback class we have seen since the early 2000s. It was absolutely awful. I'm sorry. I cannot sit here and let us tap dance around a very known subject. It was awful. All right, and the faster we accept it, the faster we can move on from it. But also, what are we talking about? Quarterbacks for the next 3 years are going to be terrible because they're not trained up properly. They can't go under center, and they make terrible passes. Drew Aller. What does everyone see in Drew Aller that I'm not seeing? Because I saw Drew Aller look at wide open receivers, do this for like 5 more seconds, and then throw an incompletion. So, please, what are we talking about here? The
you didn't watch
years is right in the toilet. It's over. It's done. They're turned into little mini robots of their offensive coordinators that never really play football. They're on the sideline with a clipboard drawing things, and because their drawings were good, they think they can coach men. They cannot, and this is what's happening. It's terrible, and we need to accept it and move on.
The most efficient. Thank you for that. That was cleansing. The most efficient and effective quarterbacks I saw today played somewhere other than the FBS. I got to see Tommy Mellott do what he does, looking fantastic. I got to see Cam Miller. Looking very, very good. If you watch the D2 National Championship, even though Sammy Edwards didn't have quite the game he wanted to have, you saw some nice flashes from him. And then Ferris State. Whew.
Oh, what did I say to you on the college football forecast the last week that we did it, Bill? Ferris State is just an unbelievable football team, and people who have no idea.
How did they lose a game? Is what I was thinking the whole time.
Exactly.
To jump back up to this game, you guys gave Klubnik and Clemson a lot of credit. A lot of credit has to go to offensive coordinator Garrett Riley. Garrett Riley was in his bag, right? So, and I'm going to draw something up. While we're at it, let's talk about good coaching 101, right? Let's pull this up here. Let's pull this up. I want y'all to see this. This is what I mean by being a good offensive coordinator. So, one of their touchdowns, this is great design. So, when you got the trips here, most people want to run verts. It's usually the outside guy. And you'll see sometimes this guy's going to run that corner route. But usually when you run verticals, he's coming up this seam here. That's not what he did here. On this touchdown throw that Klubnik threw, he's going to run the outside receiver up. He's going to run this guy right here and draw eyes. And he's going to loop him right up in here. And this is where that throw came in right in here.
Yep.
Beats the safety, corner's bailing with this, and he was wide open and just snatch and turn into the end zone. That is great design. So right there, this dude was in his bag. He's one of the reasons why when you talk about the ascension of Clemson's offense, it starts with him. Klubnik's a good quarterback, not great. But you know what? When you're designing stuff like this, that's good stuff. And you don't see that vertical route often now, designed that way.
And that receiver was wide.
Deep.
I mean, there was nobody near him.
I also like to add that. Sorry. I also like that when it comes to Garrett Riley's proficiency as an offensive coordinator, you look at TCU now and you look at TCU when they were in the national championship. That's the reason. You want to look at what caused the production for Quentin Johnson to become a first-round pick. That's Garrett Riley. You look at a guy that is able to utilize offensive linemen in a variety of ways. That's Garrett Riley. And like I said earlier with my Clemson point, if he can hold on to Riley as a coordinator and possibly get back Venables or get another defense coordinator to improve defense just a little bit more to get into that Clemson standard, they're going to be a very dangerous team in the future. And keep in mind, as much as I'm sure Garrett Riley wants to be a head coach, Tony Elliott was a assistant for 7 years before he got the Virginia job. So Dabo knows how to hold on to assistant coaches, and he knows how to pay them.
Yep. Let's move on to our final game. Of course, that one just wrapped up as we were coming on the air. We're talking about Ohio State throttling Tennessee. And I said, I warned people this could have happened last night. I did that because, like I said, I worried that Tennessee was physical enough, and they weren't. Okay? Ohio State bludgeoned them offensively and defensively for 3.5 quarters. They got a little feisty towards the end. But overall, this was Ohio State's game to lose. They came out and did what they were supposed to do. They draw Oregon in a nice rematch next week. But overall, this was what we expected from Ohio State, in my opinion. Yeah.
So Penn State and Ohio State were the two teams that were the most dominant on both sides of both offense and defense. So, like, their ability to just do whatever they wanted in offense and defense. And once again, we have at various points thrown stills and arrows at Will Howard. With the exception of one questionable interception, he had a very clean run. His ball placement was maybe the best I've ever seen. And I've watched him since his days at Kansas State. And he
was absolutely on fire today.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen him this accurate.
No.
And he ran the ball effectively when he ran the ball, though really almost didn't need it. But they did throw a little quarterback run in there just because sprinkles on the Sunday, I guess. Once again, they ran the ball at will. And you were talking about scheming things up. When Chip Kelly dials up the wheel route, it is undefeated. I mean, everyone runs the wheel route at some point, but when Chip Kelly does it, he times it well, he disguises it reasonably well, and he blocks it up also. So it's almost got some screen pass principles almost built in when he runs wheel routes. So usually there's at least one crossing receiver who's essentially almost like a wham down the field crackback kind of thing almost when he draws up the wheel route. So, I mean, wheel routes are hard to defend with nothing else going on, right? If you just, but with his sort of eye towards blocking it up a little bit by having at least one receiver and sometimes two run a route that puts them in position to pick off a downfield defender. If your running back is any good at all and catches that thing, the quarterback plays it so they can just not have to break stride, and they're able to make one guy miss. The way that he draws up the wheel route, when Chip Kelly draws it up, you're in trouble. And he usually makes it so you end up with a linebacker. He usually makes sure that there's somebody occupying the safety. So unless your linebacker is young Luke Kuechly, you're in trouble. Wheel routes, man. I don't know why people don't run wheel routes more. They are.
Travion Henderson was spectacular on those plays today. I think he had 4 catches for 54 yards. If anybody's looking for a typical pass pro running back, Travion Henderson is going to be the guy you want. Tennessee Titans you guys could really use Travion Henderson, okay? You could
They
really
could use either. They could use either of Ohio State's
or
running backs,
or
right?
Quishon Judkins,
They
yeah.
could use either of those guys. They
Yeah.
could use either of them. They could use either of Penn State's running backs too. But sticking to this game, when I saw them running, that was my only question, right? Is could that quote unquote SEC defense deny them access to the run game? Well, the answer was no. They certainly could not deny them. You mentioned physicality. The only person who really showed me physical toughness, Pierce, right, showed me some, and that kid, the California volleyball player of all people, Nico Ayamalava, actually showed me some actual toughness. When that kid puts on 12 to 17 pounds in the offseason, which is what I'm predicting he's going to do, watch out for him as a quote unquote dual threat quarterback next year. Does he struggle to decipher what zone defenses are doing? Oh my gosh, yes. And did he, miss some checkdowns and dirt some balls that could have been big plays? Almost certainly, yes. But you could see how bright the future is. Once again, another person, there was this ridiculous, amazing, depending on what you believe, crazy numbers being thrown around in his, bidding war NIL wise, depending on what you believe and what was reported. Another guy that was, Ewer-esque numbers being thrown around for him, but you can sort of see why, right? His combination of athletic ability, arm strength, though accuracy was not always there, but arm strength, and combined with his physical toughness, if he does figure out how to read defenses, boy, oh boy, have you got something there? Because that's the only thing he just, his ball placement and ability to read defenses just weren't there tonight. And I think the cold affected him as well. And you saw people, with what might have been minor, muscle pulls and things like that. But for someone from the South, that minor muscle pull in that weather didn't feel so minor, and guys maybe didn't want to test it or try to play through it. So you saw that was another effect of being not used to playing in cold weather, is that little thing that doesn't feel quite right. If you're a kid that grew up in Nebraska or Kansas or Ohio or Pennsylvania or even northern Kentucky, it's like, okay, you stretch it, you twist it, you say, okay, you get the little bit of that treatment, and you go back out and you say, I can play, I'll be at 88%, I can play through it. But if you've never felt a pulled muscle in the cold before, and the first time you get one, you think, oh no, right? You're thinking, oh mama, you're thinking, this could be it for you, right? Because it doesn't feel like you're used to a pulled muscle feeling. You've never pulled one in 27-degree weather before. So that was a revelation, I think, for some of those Southern kids.
Well, the young quarterback from Northern California also took one huge hit.
He took,
and that helmet cracked 6 inches. I mean, it was gone.
Yep.
He's a tough kid.
He's a very tough kid. Don't let the volleyball body and the volleyball background fool you. He is a super tough individual. There were two things that really impressed me about Tennessee, and he was one of them. I was really impressed with, like I said, Pierce struggled a little bit when they ran the ball straight at him. But he was great in running down plays from behind, even in the run game. He was really good at that. And like I said, he's a terrific pass rusher. They didn't get a chance to really dial up the pass rush much because Penn State was so good running the ball. And when they were throwing it in many cases in situations where you thought it was a rundown, right? They were throwing the ball sometimes in situations where you weren't loading up your pass rush. So it was, we talked about offense. Chip Kelly, surprise, Chip Kelly's a good play caller. Who knew?
Buckeyes Nation, we apologize. William Carroll called them Penn State a moment ago here. It's Ohio State. Don't.
Did I say Penn State?
Yes, you said Penn State.
Oh.
No, it's not.
Didn't mean that. But yeah, Ohio State did a great job of running the ball, and then it made so when they were passing the ball, they were able to pass it at times when Tennessee didn't have them in must-pass situations, and so you weren't loading up. You didn't have your ears pinned back, as they like to say. But yeah, Pierce impressed me, and Nico Ayamalava, and that's kind of a list of people that really impressed me for Tennessee. A lot of those big name defenders for Tennessee just didn't make plays.
Their defensive tackles, who have been so good all year long, were non-existent tonight.
Yeah.
See, this is
pushed around.
This is why I hate when they push the almighty SEC theory.
Yep.
It is not the almighty SEC. There are a
especially not
handful
this year, Jeff. Especially not this year.
Yeah, there are a handful of teams in the SEC every year that are really, really tough, and then you have a different tier of teams. It is a top. It's always been a top-heavy conference. It still is a top-heavy conference.
Yep.
You know, so let's just leave it. I hate when they pull that the SEC is the best conference, and no, they're some of the best teams in the SEC.
Georgia's a very good football team. Texas is a very good football team.
Vanderbilt's going to take the SEC next year. Paiva's coming back, and Vanderbilt wins the SEC. It's over.
Vanderbilt is a handful of grad transfers away from being a real problem.
Yeah,
they get the right.
Vanderbilt's a few lawsuits away from actually having a really good football team.
But I'm going to say this, though. You know, all this stuff about player safety, nobody wants to address the fact that this helmet split 6 inches. Okay? I'm sorry. I wore many different makes in my career, whether it was Rydell or bike or
Yep.
But, you know, my Rydell VSR4, one of them was right there in the back in the goal, never cracked, right? Never dented, never even, you may have gotten a scuff on it.
Scuff, scratches, yes.
Yeah,
correct.
but never cracked. I've never had a helmet crack on a football field.
Well, hey, it happened to Patrick Mahomes a couple of weeks ago as well.
Yeah,
like I said, that's the modern helmets, though. These are the modern helmets that are supposed to be so highly rated compared to that. Okay, that helmet never fell off. Okay, well, no matter what version of it I had, right? I see helmets falling off of people 3 and 4 times in a game.
Now, a lot of times that's on the player. Players are not fitting up their helmets the way. I mean, I don't know how it was in your day. I'm very old. But we used to literally slap each other upside the head pretty hard before each game. You would make sure your helmet was almost uncomfortably tight. At least when I played. Now, it looks like these kids want to be more comfortable. I mean, that's what it is. But in my day, you would be very relieved when you took your helmet off because you felt like your head was in a vice.
First of all, it took a Herculean effort to get your helmet on. Okay. Yes. Right? Because you had to pull the ears out and literally yank the damn thing down on your head. Okay. And you know, so it wasn't like, you know, and this is not, no, folks, this is not the leather helmet days. Okay. Okay. All right. So there were actual ear pads and all that stuff. Yes. Okay. Actual air pump that you had to pump it up to make sure it was inflated properly.
Once that helmet went on you, you were not allowed to take that helmet off on the sidelines or nothing during the game unless you were actually injured. That was the only time that helmet ever came off your head.
But Greg, you never wanted to take it off. See, that was how you got. See, that's right. You caused more problems by taking it off.
Exactly.
When you went to yank it, those clips and those clips broke. You know what it was like trying to get that fixed.
No,
so
it was a nightmare.
Yeah. Right. So. That was to see these guys sliding the thing, and next thing you know, they're running and they get hit, and the helmet flies 6 yards away. And I'm sitting there going, "These things are supposed to be highly rated."
Well, you know, like I said, I don't think the helmet is to blame for a lot of that. Quite frankly, Jeff, I see these guys. I could see when they're moving onto the field that their helmet is bouncing, like moving around in their head a little bit. It's like, oh, your helmet isn't tightened up, like. I mean,
that chin strap is supposed to be tight. It's supposed to actually, you know, you're supposed to feel that. You're not supposed to be able to move.
Yeah. So that's the part that kills me. These are the new safe helmets. They're cracking. Okay.
Yeah. Well, some of that is the technology, right? They don't want it to transmit the force. They want it to almost like the crumple zones on a car, right? They want it to sort of take the damage, right? They want it to, instead of the old theory, right? I'm old, was that you would just sort of build up the cushioning in certain areas, and then the rest of it would be sort of like an armor, right? Like literal body armor, right? It would just sort of be this sort of stiff, hard thing. So I played with, like I said, the helmets were very hard, very stiff, and they were hard to get on and difficult to take off. And now they have almost this, like I said, sort of these places that are parts of the helmet that are meant almost to like snap off or break off because they don't want the force to be transmitted to your head. They want it instead to sort of slide or shear off or deflect. Thank you. That's a word. Sort of deflect away, right? They want to deflect away force as opposed to absorbing force, right? Which is what old helmets, the helmets I wore at least a million years ago, sort of did. And I remember when I first started playing youth ball, they still had the old sort of like internal strap construction, right? Where there'd be like a little, okay, right? So there's like a elastic straps and then like a pad area about that big around. That would go right here on the crown of your head, and then the foam would be outside of that. And there's a little gap between that and the foam, and except for the ear area, whereas the foam was excruciatingly tight. And so a lot of times people will see football players not hear things, and how can they not hear that? Oh, you've never worn a football helmet. I can tell. You would understand why you can't hear certain things, even things very close to you. Sometimes you can't hear because at least my helmets, the old school helmets, had very thick, very solid, very sonic dampening pads, right? So someone could yell this close to you and you would still be kind of reading their lips, right? They could be right here and you'd still be kind of helping out with a little lip reading to make sure you understood, oh, Scat Right Z28. Got it. Okay. Right. Because you still had to use your eyes, right? If I can't see you, I can't really hear you. But the modern helmet is lighter. It is not constructed to absorb or do damage, right? Because to be honest, also the helmets we wore, woo, boy, you could really, I mean, you hit somebody in the forearm, right, with that helmet that I wore, and then you would see the way of the game, it looked like a baby's fist on their forearm.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that was, whew. Yeah, I wore some Rydell's, I wore some bikes, and what was the other one I wore? Yes, thank you. Yeah.
We only played with the Rydell's up here.
Yeah, my first helmet was a Rydell, but it was old. Okay.
Yeah.
My freshman year of high school, I wore the old Rydell's, and I'm talking the one that had the Starbuck 2-bar on it.
2-bar.
Right? So it had the 3 pads that came down the middle of the helmet.
Yep.
So I was like, oh my God. And that's because when you're the last guy in, you get the remaining equipment. So all the new stuff was taken, and you got stuck with the old stuff. Yep. Then I was fortunate to get a Bike Air the rest of my high school career, and then after that, it was nothing but Rydell's for me. And like I said, the VSR4, I love that helmet to death. I wore it my whole career. I made sure I kept wearing it. But yeah, it was. Up and now it was like everybody with the Revos now and the Speeds and those. I wasn't impressed with the design of them and seeing how they are now. I get the technology is supposed to do more to keep you from taking the impact of the hit, but I don't know, man. I'm seeing the same concussions that we saw when we were doing it.
I hear what you're saying.
Jeff, does the high school leagues have to start wearing the Guardian caps?
No, they're still optional.
I'm saying, do you believe that the high school should wear the Guardian caps? The kids in high school.
You know what? I think it's still an option. The reason why I don't push the Guardian caps as much because every time we've been on the call with the doctors, they're not impressed with the Guardian caps at all.
Yeah.
They're not. Yeah. They're saying it doesn't do anything but add extra padding. So it's not, so it's like there's no data to them that says it does anything to help the brain, which is the problem with concussions. The brain is still rattling around inside the head.
Inside your head, yeah.
So to them, the Guardian caps are just extra padding. They're not seeing anything about it that's revolutionizing the head injury market. So,
yeah,
as far as wearing it at the high school level, I think they should encourage them to wear them during practice as much as possible to avoid the extra head contact in practice. In games, to me, it's not going to make a difference. Most of the concussions these kids get is from their head hitting the floor a certain way, the ground a certain way. Rarely is it head-to-head contact, and usually when it is, the guardian cap ain't going to save them from the contact they're taking.
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's extra padding if you want to trust it. At the end of the day, the game's not safe. It's never going to be safe. It's like saying, how do you make boxing safe? Well, you can put headgear on. You're still getting hit in the head, right? So the game is a violent game. It's a collision sport.
Yep.
It's not really meant to be safe. So you can make it safe in certain ways to save yourself from certain things.
By teaching every kid how to tackle properly.
That was part of it, right? We wanted to take
key.
the head out of it, how we taught the tackling, so they came with gator rolling. Gator rolling didn't help it.
No, not at all.
All right. So, because why now your kids are getting their legs messed up. And, oh, by the way, when you're spinning that kid down, his head is also hitting the turf. And guess what? He's getting a concussion. All right. So it really didn't make anything safe, did it? So, it was good to feel good for the parents and everybody to say, see, we're trying.
Yeah.
If you don't want your kid playing a violent physical sport, guess what? Don't have them play football. But guess what? Don't have them doing martial arts either, because guess what? They're going to get hit in the head.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to get flung to the ground.
Yeah. And football's already taking enough steps to try and improve play safety and also a lack of head damage, such as the way we practice. Back in the day, full contact practices, full pads, all the time, every single day. And that's the reason why we see so many things. Or the AstroTurf. Or let's have people playing on concrete layer with a rubber pad. Those are the areas in which the NFL and football in general has improved. And that's why we're going to see difference in head trauma. We're not going to do anything that can take away trauma that's associated with the helmet or anything like that. Yes, you can improve the helmets as much as possible. But even improvements are typically improvements until we get the data 20 years down the line, when we can evaluate these players instead of when they're 20, when they're 40, and so on and so forth. So, I don't know. I just think that this conversation doesn't need to be had anymore because there is no solution for it. Football is the modern version of being a gladiator. And you know what happened to gladiators in ancient Rome? They died. Football people are going to get hurt. It's part of it. That's the whole point.
If you're fine with your kid taking Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you're fine with them playing football. They're going to do just as much damage as both. Okay? All right?
And you know what the secret is? Be an involved parent. Go to the practices. If a kid's getting hit too much, maybe the sport's not for him. You ever thought about that, people? Be present in kids' lives. That's going to stop brain damage. Also, improve coaching methods. I don't check the coaches because some of them are running stupid hitting drills. And
I played football when I played hockey. So if you want to talk about two violent sports, I picked both of them. And guess what? In the hockey, I never wore a damn helmet either. I had beautiful hair and everything, Brock. Don't laugh. I had beautiful hair.
I believe you. I mean, helmets weren't really an issue in the NHL in 1902, so I get it.
It was the 70s, you little punk.
So Brock was about to ask you what it was like to get checked into the boards by Maurice Richard.
Yeah, no, Maurice Richard was about 40
because we didn't. Because you know what? We didn't hit from behind the same way that the NHL players do now. That was a no-no. An absolute no-no was to ever hit anybody from behind. Right. You went after them with their body.
Yeah.
But you did not drive them into the boards like you see these big dummies in the NHL do today. That was not done. I mean, and when it did happen, there was fisticuffs.
People dropped the gloves, right? Exactly. That's what would happen in those days.
Honestly, we bring back more fighting in sports. I'm sorry. I want to see some dudes throwing bombs in the court. That's you guys want to know why the NBA doesn't have enough viewers? It's because guys aren't fighting anymore. They don't care. They're just there for the check.
No, it's
Nobody
because
wants-
you've got the Bulls and the Hornets taking 75 3-point shots in a night and missing them. 75 3-point shots missed.
Miss 175. If they throw your fists, I'm watching.
All right.
Oh,
So let's
this-
move. Let's
this would
move
be a
on
hot
to the
disclaimer
let's move
night
on
for
to
us here at
the next
TWS
part of the
Sports
program
Side.
where
I
we
believe
discuss
I believe
where we
every
discuss the
major
next
rivalry
game.
game, you should be able to fight after the game. You guys have a good 15 minutes. As soon as the clock hits 15:01, it's getting swarmed with mace. So you got a good 15 to get your knocks in and get out, and then after you're getting pummeled. That's how we add some excitement, baby. All right, flag planting, fist fights. All right, mace.
So
That's
Jeff,
what I'm talking about.
of the teams we saw this weekend,
Yeah,
how many of
zero
those
fight.
teams do you think can win their next game?
The views of Brock Vieira are his and his alone.
Brock
They do not
Vieira.
represent TWS Media and its affiliates. Okay.
If Tennessee knew there was gonna be a fist fight, they'd play a lot better. That's all I'm gonna say.
And normally that's reserved for me. Well, now, Brock,
You tell me right now. You don't want to see Jack Sawyer throw some hands. That sounds like a good way to spend a Saturday afternoon. If I'm being honest, that's what I want to see more of. I'm sorry. If none of these games next week have a fight, we're doing something wrong. Like this is your life and legacy on the line. Like you want to see players come back to their universities the next year, have them be on the losing side of that fight and the game. They're going to want to come that again. Forward thinking in the modern world. Old school ideas.
Ryan Day's going to go
technology.
0-5. He goes 0-5 next year against that school up north. He goes, they're going to lose. They're going to lose again.
Who's this Ryan Day's coming back? Like I'm sorry. Pummeling Tennessee in the bitter cold of Ohio doesn't exactly instill a bunch of confidence that you're going to be the coach and lift it over. Now, if they beat Oregon, of course, that's a different story. But that is a very tall task.
That is a very tall task.
Yes. I'd also like to add to this conversation that Texas versus Arizona State, I got upset alert on entering next week. I got Sun Devils on the way. There is a gentleman.
I'm with you on that. I feel like of all the games, the ones that I have circled are that one and then Boise State. People have right now Penn State as like an 11 or 12 point favorite. I don't know.
Asher Jeanty, Cam Scottable, different sides of the same coin in terms of running back. I'm talking about explosive, hard nosed, want to get it, desire, determination, production. All right. And you know, I never heard of Thunder and Lightning? All right. Well, this is like chocolate and pina coladas. Like, it's going to be phenomenal what we're going to see. And they're going to lift their teams up, especially Arizona State, because unlike Boise State, Arizona State has their own independent passing attack. When you combine that with the skills of Scoutable, they can spread and shred a Texas defense that looked very, very exposed today against Clemson. Watch out, Arizona State next week. And to your point, Bill Carroll, it's going to come down to Maddox Madsen, Boise State's quarterback. If he can put the ball on the money, especially on play action, bootlegs, things of that nature, they're going to have the tight end in one-on-one situations deep downfield. If they can hit those things, they're going to be very dangerous, and they will defeat the Penn State. Right? Yes, they will defeat Penn State. However, if there is any team that can pull the quote-unquote upset from the ranking standpoint, it is Penn State, because they're shown to be very stout defensively, and they have the right type of players to be able to handle Jeanty and force Madsen into those tough passes in tough windows.
Yeah, I have that game circled for a couple of reasons. One is I do definitely want to see Jeanty against, all those sort of shots people take about, well, who's he played? Well, I mean, Oregon. Oregon, the number one team in the country, looked pretty good against them. But somehow people have wiped that from their memory. So they say, oh, yeah, he's put up these great numbers, but blah, blah, blah. So it'll shut up some of those people, I hope. But yeah, for me, Madsen has to, for me, it's if he can get 2 total touchdowns, whether it be passing, rushing, or a combination, 0 turnovers, no fumbles, no interceptions. And if he's hitting on around 2/3 of his passes, he doesn't have to have a lot of passing yards. He could have 150, 160 passing yards, and still that could be victory. but he has to be efficient and effective. No turnovers. I cannot stress that enough. 0 turnovers. He cannot turn the ball over. And if he himself can generate 2 total touchdowns, either passing or running, if he has 2 touchdowns, Genty has 1, and their defense is able to not stop Penn State, because I don't think they can stop Penn State, but at least they can get stops, right? At least 3 times they can send Penn State off the field without scoring, right? They do at least 3 times they have denied Penn State a chance to score. Yeah, go ahead, Brock.
No, I disagree with you on that one 100%, Bill. I think the Boise State defense can stop Penn State. And here's why. Now, obviously, if Penn State gets the running game going, it's over. But I think Boise State has enough players, enough talent along the defensive line to give Penn State some problems in those gaps. Especially a player like Ahmad Hassain, who I think is going to be a very good player at the next level. Alongside that fact, Drew Allen has not shown us a single shred of evidence that he can put it on when it counts. I'm sorry. Was there anything that we saw in this game or the game against Ohio State or the game in his entire career against competition that is to his level or above that gives us the confidence to say that he can elevate this Penn State offense? I'm sorry, but when they get down the clutch, if this game goes hard, if it's going to go, and they're going to have to call Tyler Warren game, start doing those tight end powers up the middle, whatever they're doing. They have 0 ability to run a functional standard offense, and that will be Boise State's biggest benefit going into this game. It will not be Genty. It will be the fact that Penn State cannot beat them consistently through the air. And that's why I think Boise State has a very strong chance of holding Penn State to under 21 points.
Woo. Well, to me, yeah, go ahead.
Going by Vegas's thoughts, right? Vegas believes Penn State should get it done against Boise. They got them as 10.5 favorites, right?
10.5, okay.
They believe Texas should take out Arizona State. They're 13.5 favorites.
Ooh.
Here's the rub, okay? Here's the rub. Oregon, or Ohio State. Ohio State. Ohio State. I'm reading it right. Ohio State, 1.5 point favorites.
Oregon money line.
All right. So think about that. Number 1 is the dog in this matchup right now.
Yep.
All right.
They get no respect. Yeah, I get it. Right.
Georgia, Notre Dame. Georgia, 1.5 point favorites over the Irish.
That's it. They're going to dog walk the Irish by 20.
All right.
Brock, don't start this again. The Joe Moore Award goes to the best offensive line in the country, correct? Correct,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Who won it this year?
I don't care who won this year. Watson won last year. Michigan got rapid all over the offensive line. What are we talking about here?
The Army was number 1 in the country for the offensive line.
Every single time he threw a pass, he thought the defender was right here. Do you know why he thought that?
I don't care, Brock. I don't care. I don't care. The Army was the best offensive line unit in this country this year. And Bill, I told you months ago, Bill, that I was worried about playing the Army. And this is one of the reasons why. What did the Notre Dame defense do to that offensive line for Army and Bryson Daly? They shut them down. Shut them down.
Yeah, you know who also shut down the Army? The Navy. All right.
Yeah. Bronco Horvath, who had 200 yards against them. He played very well, which was another reason why I was worried, because Navy playing Notre Dame as well. Those were the reasons why I had worries about those 2 service school games.
You should have worries because Notre Dame is about to feel the wrath of God.
Lord.
When they go play Georgia. I'm sorry.
Right.
Are we being for real right now? This is a Kirby Smart, prepared, healthy SEC champion Georgia Bulldogs.
Oh, here we go with the SEC bias. There you go again with the SEC bias. There you go again.
The truth?
No.
Yes.
They have a rookie quarterback.
Gunner Stockton.
Quarterback in the 21st century if he played for the Fighting Irish. Let's be real now.
Oh, come on now.
No, what do you mean, come on? It's the truth. It's true.
Gunner Stockton needs to sort of follow that same prescription we just laid out for Mr. Maxson, in that avoid turnovers,
Avoiding turnovers. Which defense in this country has more turnovers? Oh my God! It's the Fighting Irish yet again.
That's what happens when you schedule Northern Illinois School of Blind and Deaf.
Well, Northern Illinois beat them, but
technically, Notre Dame's schedule, if you're really looking at it, is not easy. It's not easy. It's an ACC schedule for the most part. So,
as which SMU from the American Diamond. I just want to add that small little tidbit. So we're talking about the SEC champ.
SMU's in the playoffs.
Bingo. Maybe if you play the Super Bowl, it's a little bit different. I agree. Kevin James got hurt, by the way. He's great. I love Kevin James a lot. I just want to add that. Like, I always attach myself to one quarterback every year. This year it's Kevin James. But the point
he's a good player. Yeah.
Notre Dame was pretty good for the most part against an ACC dominant schedule. We are talking about the SEC champion here. I don't even think
And they went and played Texas A&M week 1. They beat Texas A&M, an SEC school, week 1. They played
Who cares?
Big Ten schools. They don't care who you are, where you're from. They are the Fighting Irish in Notre Dame, and they're not the Brian Kelly. They're not the Brian Kelly version. This is the Marcus Freeman version of the Fighting Irish.
They're all the Charlie Weis version because they're all the same version, which is to not meet expectations year after year. Every time they run to a wall, do they run through it? No. They're not called the Crusaders. They are called the Fighting Irish. Why? Because when you reach the shores of England or the national championship, what happens? You lose.
Good
I
Lord.
love Notre Dame.
We've only won 11 national titles in our lifetime, but that's okay. Don't worry about that.
That doesn't count as before World War II.
Oh, for God's sakes. 1977, 1988. Don't give me this BS about the timeline.
You know who wasn't alive in those times?
You weren't. Exactly. You weren't alive. The rest of us were.
One championship since 1980 means nothing. All right, you know what Notre Dame is? They are the Chicago Bears. That's exactly It's hold on.
No.
Yes. Yes.
Now, getting back to these other games, I have Georgia losing to Notre Dame by a field goal.
Oh my Lord.
I have Oregon. I have Oregon also losing to Ohio State. And Arizona State does beat Texas. So these odds makers are off their rockers.
Hold on. You have Ohio State beating Oregon.
Yes, I do.
My brother in Christ, have you lost your mind?
No, because I can't stomach the handle to listen to Monty talk about the Oregon Ducks anymore. I don't want to hear about the Oregon Ducks. They're gone.
That's not how that works.
Yes, it does.
No. Oregon outclassed Ohio State in the defense.
And they beat them by what? 1 whole point. Woo!
Yeah, that's because one of the one teams have to spit on somebody. There's going to be no spitting this time. And let's not forget, to the Genty point, that Oregon team Genty went off against was a lot different than the Oregon team now. Remember, that Oregon team had struggled against Idaho. They are firing on all cylinders. They beat Penn State brutally in the Big Ten championship game, and they have the firepower as wide receiver to destroy the Ohio State secondary again. The 2 tackles for Oregon are Connerly and I think Cornelius, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Are going to shut down JTT and Jack Sawyer. Don't expect any pressure from Williams at the middle because they're pretty good inside. And no matter what happens, Dylan Gabriel's ability to run the football is going to be the critical portion of this thing in this game that is going to give the Oregon Ducks yet another victory over the Ohio State.
So there you go. Because last night you were talking about how Sims is just this great wide receiver. He should be number 1 and all this other jazz. And there you are going against your guy. You're going against your guy. I don't understand this.
Is Jeremiah Smith the entire Ohio State Buckeyes?
No, they got Ibuka too.
They still got good defense.
And this defense plays a damn good, solid game today, didn't they?
Against Tennessee in the bitter cold. Come on now. Let's not act like this was a proficient Tennessee passing offense that they faced off against today. And even if they played them in the solid weather, Tennessee's offense still isn't as good as Oregon's. Nico is not a veteran talent yet. because he's
I'm
so
telling
young.
you,
Really,
Ohio
you know
State
this.
beats Oregon.
Ohio
Arizona
State
State
wins one
beats
big game.
Texas. Notre Dame beats Georgia.
No, does not
And-
beat Georgia.
Yes, they do.
They do
Yes,
not.
they do.
They do
So
not.
just go ahead and keep thinking the way you want. I'm going to continue to say that Notre Dame will beat Georgia.
And I'm
This
telling you,
is
they're
what
not,
we're
my friend.
talking. This is
I'll
what we're
be-
talking about. We're talking
I'll-
about the next
so-
game.
I'm going to be fair to Greg here. Friend of the show, Emery Hunt, said
Bingo.
Notre Dame's going to beat Georgia.
Yes.
And
Friend of the show, Emery Hunt might have been a
so
little-
it's not just Greg out there, folks.
Joel
That's believing this.
Klatt
There
said the
are
same
people-
thing as well. And
Well,
there's
there
many
are
other
people outside of Notre
many
Dame
other
fans
experts
that
who are
believe
saying the
this is
same
going to
thing.
happen.
And
Vegas believes that it's possible by having basically a push line. Anything less than 3 points is a push line.
yeah, to me,
Something
it comes down
we
to two
need 2
things.
games.
It comes down to 2 things. One is which one of these teams will enforce its will on the line of scrimmage, right? That's what we've seen in all of these games. The one thing that every single one of the winning teams had in common, and most winning teams, frankly, have in common, is when you're able to reset, as they say, the line of scrimmage, right? As a defense, you're pushing into the backfield consistently, right? You're consistently forcing the offense. The running backs are having to dodge people in the backfield. The quarterbacks are feeling pressure, not just from the edges, but right in their face. And on your side of the ball, you're consistently pushing the defense 2 or 3 yards off the ball. You're going to win pretty much, or you should win pretty much, I would say well over 90% of those games where that happens. If Georgia is able to reset the line of scrimmage against Notre Dame is very good in the trenches, but that's also where Georgia, the strengths are strength on strength there, right? Georgia and Notre Dame have a lot of the same strengths. The 2 quarterbacks are both question marks. Riley Leonard is experienced, but when he's hot, he can be, quite effective. And when he's cold, he can literally put them out of the game almost by himself. And Gunnar Stockton is a solve for X kind of situation because we've seen him in mop-up duty. We've seen him, in little fits and starts, but he has not been asked to be in a quote-unquote high-leverage situation before for an entire game. This is going to be a new thing. What we do know about him is he moves well, right? He's a very mobile guy. And that's what he and Leonard have in common. They both can really create, as they say, that's they always call mobile quarterbacks creative, even if they're not creative. They would say they're creative. But to me, if Gunnar Stockton can hit at least 4 deep shots, 4, Georgia wins. If he hits 4 deep shots, 4 passes of 20 over 25 yards down the field, Georgia wins. If
the Bulldogs had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers back, I could see that happening. But guess what? They don't have a good tight end this year. They're wide receivers.
Whoa. Time out. Did you just did not say they don't have a good tight end this year?
Delp, you think he's that great?
I don't think he's outstanding, but I think he's pretty good.
They have an above average tight end. They have solid wide receivers. They don't have stars at either of the positions.
Bingo.
They don't. But you don't have to be a star. I mean, Pat Mahomes hits deep shots to guys who aren't stars. Like, you don't have to have stars. You have to simply place the ball in such a place where your receiver can run and go get it, right? And even though the guys that aren't stars, they can run, right? None of Georgia's receivers are slow, even though they aren't household names. They can all run. So can they get some big plays in the passing game down the field? Because that will enable them to have some opportunity to also run the ball. I think they have to run the ball. They'll get opportunity to run the ball if they're able to effectively pass. If you're not able to effectively pass the ball, Notre Dame's defense is good enough that if all you can do is run, they can take away the run. And that, to me, means that Notre Dame ekes out a victory. I think Notre Dame will also struggle mightily to move the ball as well. I think this will be a defensive struggle no matter what happens. But to me, it comes down to forcing, on 3rd and 1, who can get a yard and a half versus the team that gets stuffed, right, and is punting. The team that consistently can get those short yardage, just blow the other team off the ball, that team wins. That, to me, that's that simple. If Notre Dame does it, they'll win. If Georgia does it, they'll win.
Here's a big question. Can Notre Dame overcome turning the ball over 2 times against Georgia and win the game?
I think 2 is too many. I think they can overcome 1.
I think they can overcome 1. The problem is not the fact of the offense. It's the fact that you look at how Notre Dame was able to beat Indiana. Those holes are not going to be there against Georgia, or if they are, they're going to be very small and in very limited quantities. But you have a quarterback that has shown time and time again you cannot fit those holes in there, fit the ball into those holes. And you have a run game right now that we're still trying to see what's going on. Now, I understand that Jeremiah Love was sick, and he'll probably be a full go for this game. But this is more talking about the offensive line. Those gaps, those holes, those big gashes for 10, 20 yards are going to be 2 to 3 yard gains, which means that Ryan Leonard is going to have to throw the football in third and manageable situations. And if he does that, can he do that enough times to get them into the end zone instead of the field goal? I think this game is going to be a very slow burn. It's going to be like a 10-7 game at halftime, maybe a 13-all game in the third. But the fourth quarter is where Georgia takes over. And when it's time to get it done, I think Notre Dame is going to make a critical mistake that will end up being the Achilles heel.
You keep thinking that. Keep thinking that, bro.
I will keep thinking that because I watched Notre Dame poop the bucket in big times in the past with Brian Kelly or Marcus Freeman at the helm.
I want to look at something, Brock, because this intrigued me. Your opinion on this, because there's something about these two teams that's linked. I want to say
Georgia Tech is the common opponent.
Well, I think they have more than one, but Georgia Tech is definitely one of them.
Yes.
All right. So
who else do they have as a common opponent? A&M. Right? Did Georgia play A&M? No, they didn't. Right? Or did they play A&M?
Georgia did not play A&M.
They did not. Georgia didn't play A&M.
The only common opponent is Georgia Tech, I'm sure.
They wouldn't have played them. No. So Georgia Tech.
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to look at the Georgia Tech matchup for these two teams, right? 42-44, an 8 overtime game, basically, for Georgia. Notre Dame handled Georgia Tech 31-13.
Yes. I would like to add completely different scenarios. I'll go back.
Was Ace King healthy for both of those?
I don't think he was healthy for the Notre Dame game.
That's what I was about to say. To me, that is a significant difference.
He still wasn't healthy. He still wasn't that healthy playing the Bulldogs either. He was not 100%.
He was healthier. I'll put it that way. Because he didn't play. I don't think he played at all. Right? Did he suit up even for the?
Yeah, he did. He suited up against.
He suited up. Okay, he did suit up. Okay.
I'm just saying that Notre Dame played a Georgia Tech team that was still kind of rolling through the season. Georgia Tech played Georgia after they just got done beating that poop out of previously undefeated Miami. The change in mindset is something that we are not putting into the equation here. That changes things. Also, why was they playing at a neutral site stadium? This has nothing to do with this argument. I just want to know, like, what provoked Notre Dame and Georgia Tech to play it at a neutral site? It's very odd. Just want to add that.
Because it's no different than Tennessee and Florida playing each other in a neutral site. It's no different.
But it's no Florida and Tennessee don't play each other in a neutral site.
Pardon me?
So Florida and Tennessee do not play each other in a neutral site.
Whichever games you want to discuss going to a neutral site, it doesn't matter. Everybody plays on neutral sites. Everybody does.
You still got to win.
This is not an argument. I was just asking a question. Why was that game scheduled like that? Like, why did you just have it on campus?
I don't know.
No argument.
That's an AD question, but nevertheless,
I just want to know, like, why did we have Tennessee versus Virginia Tech on a NASCAR stadium like 7 years ago? like, why do we do these things?
Oh, well, Brock, that part is simple. You know, if somebody's going to pay extra for you to go there, you're going to play it. If somebody wants to pay your university $2 million to play on the moon, you're going to play on the moon. It is what it is. So
I guess I was more shocked because like week 7 or week 8 in like the middle of the season, like you were expecting.
It don't matter when the money goes, so do the teams.
That's right.
Yes. So
so
we got to wrap this up, guys.
Yes.
Yes. Me too.
So looking at next week, the next round, we were talking about it. Arizona State, are they being undersold in this? Because
Absolutely.
right now, Vegas doesn't believe Texas is going to lose that game, and a majority of fans don't believe Texas is going to lose that game.
If you watch the Arizona State team play this season, and they've got Texas favored by what, 13.5, you said?
13.5.
They don't pay any attention to what Arizona State and how they played this year then. Because that team is a top bunch.
Yeah. Texas might well win, but I'll be shocked if they win by 10, let alone 14. I mean, that feels like, were I a gambling man, that I might invest in that game.
Yes, I guess something about that doesn't feel right. I don't know. Arizona State are playing some of the best football in this country in the past 5-6 weeks.
Right.
I mean, maybe a little less than that. I don't remember what the last loss was, but at a time when everyone in the Big 12 just started losing randomly, Arizona State caught fire at the right time, and you don't want to play a team that's hot and confident. Also, when you talk about being a modern coach for modern times, Kenny Dillingham is that guy. And I'm telling you guys right now, when push comes to shove, Arizona State is going to want to die on that field for Dillingham. And quite frankly, I don't know if Texas has that same type of dedication to Sark. I'm not criticizing Sark. I just know for sure Kenny D has it.
Well, here's what I will say. Texas certainly has a good defense, but they haven't seen anyone quite like Cameron Scavo because there isn't anybody quite like him. He's got a lot of interesting different elements that you see in different kinds of backs, all shoved into one back, right? He catches the ball extremely well. He has size. He has gotten into great shape. He was sort of a battering ram before, but now he's added with the sort of weight loss and, adding muscle, but losing a lot of body fat. He's managed to become even more nimble. He has better change of direction. He's always had great vision. He's explosive. He's versatile. He can, he can run any kind of running play you want to run. He can receive the ball as well or better than most of the wide receivers in this playoff. He can punt. He can throw the ball. I mean, he really is like a mid 1950s, single wing tailback in what he can do. He's essentially, like a squat, powerful version of like Paul Hornung. I mean, he really can do a little bit of everything. And I love him. He's one of my favorite. He knows, right? I've talked about him since before he transferred. I've talked about him back in the Sacramento State days. I'm a huge fan and have been for years. I think he's one of the best 20 players in college football. And if not for missing some games with injury, I think he would have been a Heisman Trophy finalist.
Final thoughts, guys, because we got for us to call it a night. We're going to be back for the next round of games. So, final thoughts.
Well, other than thinking the line is ridiculous on that game we just talked about, quarterbacking is something people spend a lot of time analyzing and taking apart and putting together. And in these situations, while it's important, if you put too much on your quarterback, it usually means that you've done something wrong, right? If your quarterback needs to play at a superhuman level, it needs to do what Josh Allen does, whatever, you're doing something wrong. If you look at the success that Will Howard had tonight, it was because Will Howard was asked to do Will Howard things and not asked to do Josh Allen things, not asked to do Pat Mahomes things, because he's not that. He's not any of those things. If any of the quarterbacks in the games we're talking about are asked to do Herculean things, right? Kevin Jennings for SMU to have won would have had to have put on his whoever, right? He'd have to have been a combination of Johnny Manziel, Lamar Jackson, and I don't know, pick a third quarterback for them to win that game. If you need your quarterback to do that, you're going to be in trouble. Quarterbacks are going to do what they do, right? And once again, the old Navy SEAL adage, you do not rise to the occasion, you settle at the level of your team.
At the level.
Right. So look at what a player has been to figure out what a player will be. And sometimes they'll be slightly above that or slightly below that. But we talked about Drew Aller, right? If you ask Drew Aller to simply keep the truck out of the ditch, you're going to win that game. If you ask Drew Aller to win the game for you, you're going to lose that game. Gunnar Stockton is even more true of. Madsen, it's even maybe the most, well, except maybe Stockton, it's the most true of him other than maybe Stockton. Just ask him to do the things he does well. If you need them to be truly great, transcendent and amazing, you're going to be in trouble. That's my final thought. Ask your quarterback to do what they do well, not more.
Greg?
I agree with what Bill had to say. Like I said, I've got Penn State barely coming out against Boise State. I do have Arizona State beating Texas. They started at 11 o'clock in the morning that day, and Texas, when they play early, they don't handle that very well. I'm sorry. If you saw them play at Arkansas, they did not play very well against the Razorbacks because it was 11 a.m. kickoff as well.
It took a while to wake up in that game. You're right.
Yep.
Late wake up.
And then I do have Ohio State getting their revenge because winning 2 games against the same team in this college environment is no easy task. And I think Ohio State does come out and beat Oregon.
Yeah, I'm only going to push back. If there is a quarterback who I think is capable of doing the thing that you don't want your quarterback to do, it's probably Dylan Gabriel. He's the guy that could rush for 100 yards and pass 300 yards and just eviscerate your team. If they're able to keep him from hurting them as a runner, they might be able to absorb the damage that he'll do to them as a passer. But if he's able to do both against them, which is what he did last time, I don't see them finding a way to win that game. That, to me, that's all they're doing, right? All your practices, if you have somebody who can sort of replicate what Dylan Gabriel does, is built around how can we stop him from hurting us as a runner? If we can make him a passer, and he's a good passer, he's an excellent passer, but if we can make him essentially one-dimensional, you have a shot, you do have a path to victory. But if he's able to do both, Greg, it'll be tight like it was last time, but I just think he'll make a play, right? Because if he's doing both to you, what do? How do you stop it, right? If he's able to run effectively and throw effectively, you're playing that game on your heels, and that's not a way to win a football game. But yeah, other than that, I agree with most of what you said.
Brock?
Yeah, no, I thought that you guys have touched on everything. There's not really much more to add except I actually appreciate these slate of games. Obviously, one of the most exciting things. But I think we got a chance to learn a lot about these teams, where they're going in the future, where these head coaches are going, and also what should be the points for evaluation as we continue this process moving forward. I still think that it should be a 12-team playoff. I'd actually expand it even further. That comes with a whole other set of rules that I have and making a perfect one of college football, where everything is aligned and nothing is too wild. That's not the point. Point is that this has been a great experience. I think having on-campus playoff games has been a real treat, and we need to see more of it.
Yep, agreed.
Also, real quick, every team should be reseeded after each round. Like, there's no reason we should have direct paths. There should be like the NFL, where the lowest plays at number 1, second lowest plays number 2, so on and so forth.
Agreed. I'll second that motion.
Well, yeah, but those 4 automatic bids needs to that is the first switch that has to be made.
What you mean?
The 4 teams getting in as a quarterfinalist automatically, that needs to be changed. It cannot just be the conference champions, especially with a record that's lower, right? Because Arizona State gets in as the 4 seed.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Texas got bumped up to number 5, right?
Because they lost, but continue.
Because they did lose the conference championship game, right?
Okay.
But all I'm saying is that those 4 automatic bids that were supposed to be for the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12, guess what? The Mountain West messed all that plan to heck. And that is something that I don't agree with. And Nick Saban agrees with me as well. Those top 4 seeds do not deserve their spots because this is becoming it becomes an invitation to land one of those 4 spots. I want everybody to play. Everybody. I want them to have to earn this.
I thought they
wait, what?
I thought they got it right with the NCAA tournament. You win your conference, you're automatically in the playoff, right?
That's right.
Now, as far as giving them the buys, I think that goes to the best 4 teams. I don't think it has to go to a conference champion.
That's the part I'm getting at, Brock.
If you're a 1-loss team and your only loss is in the conference championship, but you're going to give it to somebody with 3 or 4 losses that won a conference, you know what I'm saying? Just because you're a conference champion in the NCAA tournament, you can still be a 10 seed.
Right.
You know, so I think that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I get what Greg is saying there, and I agree with that portion. You know, NFL is NFL. That's the top level of football. You win your conference, you win your division. That's your reward is hosting a playoff game. Okay, now only one gets to bye now, so you got to win, home field throughout to get the bye. But we got 4 buys here. So to me, the top 4 teams should get it regardless of who they are, whether it's conference or not. I agree with that portion of it. I still think you win your conference, you're automatically in. But
I would just like to add, I disagree with that because I think that takes away the majesty or the majesticness of conference championship weekend. The fact that despite having everything built up to that moment, that one critical loss can send you down. I think it adds more to the pageantry. And quite frankly, I don't know, maybe it's just my cynicism, but it feels like we are rewarding losses every single year that we have since the playoff was first introduced. Like, oh, we only have 2 losses we should be in. Oh, we only have 3 losses we should be in. I think that if you lose, there should be a serious, penalty for it. I just don't think that we can just trot into conference championship weekend.
I get what you're saying too.
That's all.
I get that. We're not really rewarding losses, right?
Right.
You're
saying that if you're a 1-loss team and your only loss was in conference championship, you being seated lower than the team that, as you said, maybe lost 3 games, but won the conference championship is now seated above you. It feels a little funny. I guess is the way.
I'm just saying, how many times in the NFL have we seen a 7-9 team hosting an 11-5?
But the NFL is a different level.
Very famously, the Beastquake game, right, was one of those situations.
And that 7-9 team won, right? So the NFL is a different level. I don't compare anything to the NFL.
But if you say
like that, apples and oranges.
I get it, but if you say it like that, that means you're taking away from the conferences in general. Because then there's no longer P5 versus G5.
No. If you lose in a conference title game, you got to pray that you get in. Right? But if you're that good a team that they can't deny you, even though you lost your conference, I think listen, one game shouldn't define your whole season in that case, right? So to me, if you're going to have conference champions that have 2 and 3 losses, and you have a team with 1 loss who only lost 1 game, all right? Now, people are going to rip Indiana to shreds because they got beat by Notre Dame the way they got beat. But they beat a lot of good teams this year.
Right. And even though they got dominated, it wasn't like they got embarrassed. I mean, that was a competitive game, though they got dominated. It wasn't like, some of the other games we just saw, quite frankly, were less competitive than that game was. There were only 2
and SMU lost on a walk-off field goal, and they got smoked just now, right? So, it always plays itself out. And I said, when you went past 4 in the playoffs, you're going to get a lot more blowouts in the playoffs because now you're starting to stretch the teams that normally really shouldn't have been in a playoff to begin with. But we're talking about Clemson. Clemson played a better game than a lot of people expected. That should have been a blowout, though. Yeah. All right. So, you're seeing certain seeds and going, well, was Clemson that much better than Indiana?
Nope.
But once again,
See what I'm saying?
those are the only two somewhat interesting games were Indiana and Clemson's. The other two were, I mean, I made myself finish watching them because we have to discuss these games, but they stopped being very interesting pretty early on. And I give certainly credit to, SMU didn't really do a lot ever, but I give credit to Tennessee. They showed, some gumption and some spirit, but they were clearly outmatched. Indiana, frankly, there was talent issues, a talent gap there in that game. You could see it, particularly along the offensive and defensive lines. You can see the gap in talent between the two teams there. And that's really what decided that game. And then Clemson and Texas was the one where at least the talent gap wasn't as obvious, right? You could see that there wasn't that much of a difference in talent, but there was a difference in execution, right? Texas really had a really terrific game plan on both sides of the ball and executed it pretty well. And Clemson eventually adjusted to some of it, but by that point they were fighting uphill, right? And that's nothing. You don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be having to attack, a fortified position uphill, right, Greg? The first thing they teach you is don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And that's what Clemson found itself doing.
Well,
but yeah.
That'll do it for us, too. It's time for us to go. All right. Yes. But it's been great talking some more college football. We'll be back for the next round. In the meantime, have a Merry Christmas.
Right. See you guys in a week and a half.
Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whichever you wish to celebrate.
All of that.
Even Brock's Hawaiian Christmas and Mele Kaliki Maka. Yeah, see, I'm being nice to you. I'm being nice to you.
Not really. You just Brock's Hawaiian Christmas, by the way. Just heads up.
Mele Kaliki Maka. See, I understand this.
Wow. Congratulations to the Big Crosby.
No, it was Elvis, you idiot.
It was big. I'm not saying Elvis didn't sing it, but Big Crosby also has a whole record of him saying.
I never did. I'm sorry, I didn't like Bing Crosby, even though I'm old.
Children, it's okay.
I didn't like Bing Crosby. That's right. That's why I didn't like him. But anyhow, yes, Mele Kaliki Maka to you, Brock, and to everybody else. Enjoy your holiday.
Shout out to Ferris State. National champions.
Yes, Ferris State.
And a big shout out also to Montana State and North Dakota State.
North Dakota State back home where they belong.
And by the way, if you guys want to know why they produce high caliber quarterbacks, it's because they run the ball from under center on 3rd and 1. So the quarterbacks have to learn how to throw.
Well, yeah, they actually do play. They play the right way.
You mean football? Yeah, I remember when people actually played football.
Those guys, none of those teams would be thrown off by playing outdoors in December. Also, they'd be just fine with it.
Let's attack the dominant Ohio State defensive line by having Dylan Sampson get the ball 5 yards in the backfield, going sideways. That's that next level thinking. That makes you the money.
Well, we're going silent in about 30 seconds.
There we go. We're going silent.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy and safe holidays. We'll see you around the new year.
And once again, thank you, everyone. Everyone have a wonderful holiday. Merry Christmas, joyous Kwanzaa, a peaceful Hanukkah, Diswali, and I guess what Greg calls Hawaiian Christmas.
Jeff and I have moving the chains tomorrow as well. So I got to come up with my real bad upset picks that don't turn out ever this year, except for one. One did.
That's true. You got one last week.
Oh, okay. Yes.
You got 1 out of 3, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You might be terrible at that.
Well, no, I took the Panthers to beat the Giants, so that's 2 this year that I did of my lone wolf picks that came through.
Well, you didn't lone wolf on the Panthers. I didn't pick the Giants either.
I was like 30 seconds ago.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I refuse to pick the Giants. Yeah. But anyway, I'm picking for us to head out, folks. We're like SpongeBob. We're heading out. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.